Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you how you can look up constraints on tables. This may be a review for some of you and maybe not for some others. I'm going to go into Oracle Apex and look at two tables, look at constraints on those tables, and then show you what constraint violations look like if you try to violate them. So let's review the tables we're going to be using today. I have three tables here. We're only going to be using two. We're going to be using the employees table and the departments table. Just as a review, when you go into this area of Apex, you can look at your recently created tables, your recent SQL commands, and your recent SQL scripts. So before you get started, if you wanted to take a look at your scripts, you can do so right here. And also, if you want to, if it's useful to you, you can review your last SQL statements. But I digress. So let's look at the employees table. Now in the employees table, you're going to notice all these tabs up here where you got the table, the add column, the modify column, the data, all this other good stuff. You'll learn how all these works in time. What I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you that constraints tab, which you see on the very above here. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a click there. And when I click on the constraints tab, you should see the constraints that we have for the employees table. So it's going to take a little bit to refresh, but I'm going to give it a click. And when I click on restraints, just below in that area where we have this area here, it should show me the constraints on that table. And it took a little bit to refresh, but take a look at this. We have a primary key constraint and a foreign key. So the primary key is an emp ID, and the foreign key is on the department column that relates to the department table. It says so right there in the related constraint. So I'm just going to quickly go through this and kind of leave it to you to maybe stop the video if you wanted to take a look at this in more detail. But basically, I just wanted to show you how you can look up a constraint or the constraints for a specific table. So I showed you how to do that. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what constraint violations look like if we try to execute a SQL statement, for example, to insert a row that might have or trigger a primary key constraint violation, or if we try to delete something that might violate a foreign key constraint. So I have here some recent SQL commands, and again, you may have some SQL commands that you may want to reuse. I'm just looking through mine to see if there's anything I may want to reuse for this example. I don't think I kind of do, so I'm just going to have to go in there and write my own SQL. As a review, let me look at what I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to be inserting a record into the employees table, and I'm going to try to trigger a primary key violation by specifying a duplicate primary key. So let me go into SQL commands and try to do that. First, let me see what I might have, just to see for this example here, what I have in my employee table. So let me just do a select star from employees and take a look at what I have in the employees table. So I'm going to go move this down a little bit and click on run. And you can see here I have just a couple of employees. I get employee ID 2 Cassie and employee ID Cadence. So if I tried to insert a record and tried to duplicate employee ID 2, I should get a primary key violation. Or when I run this or execute this, you should see something like PK constraint violation, blah, 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 blah. So let's see how that works or what that looks like. So I'm going to type in insert into employees values, and I'll put in a duplicate. I'll put in 2, and for the employee name, I'll put in, how about Mike Jordan, if you ever heard of him, and let's just say Mike Jordan works for department number 100, whatever department 100 may be. So let me put a semicolon at the end of my SQL statement, and then notice that I do have that primary key, so this should fail, and it does. This is expected. Look to see what this error is. It says unique constraint violated. Now look at that sys underscore whatever. You'd be able to see that in that prior screen that I showed you, where you could look up that constraint. So I'm just gonna be nice and make Mike Jordan employee 1, and since we didn't violate the primary key and inserted it. But if I try it again, I'm gonna get this message, right? Because this message is telling me that basically in English, employee ID 1 already exists. So you see how that these error messages work when we have a primary key violation, which is basically a constraint violation. So let's try to get a constraint violation for departments. So let me see what I have in departments. So in departments, I have, well, let me just change my table name. This should work better. Department, there we go. So I got my department ID and my department name. Now, just to save you the time, department ID is a primary key for the department table, and it's also a foreign key that relates the employee table to the department. So basically in English, we can't insert an employee that department doesn't exist. So the department has to exist in the department table before we can insert it into employees, or the converse is true as well. We can't delete, in this case, a department that has child records in the employee table. If you remember, when we looked at the employee table, we had employees that were in department ID 100. And since it's a foreign key, we're not going to be able to be allowed to delete that record in the department table. So when I try to execute the SQL statement, I correctly get this message. This is expected. It's saying it has a child record that's found. All that means in English is you have department ID 100 as a column value for a specific employee. And again, you can take a look at that just by going to take a look at your department, or looking at, your employees to see what you have in there. So if I do a select star from employees, you're going to see that, for example, we have a lot of them. We have everyone here is in department ID 100. So what's happening here is Oracle, the database, is not letting us delete those records or that one department in the department table because we have child records in the employees table. That's all I have. So thank you for listening. Thank you for making it this far. And I bid you all a very well rest of the day. Thank you.